Well, hey everybody, it's Dr. Sasheen. Thanks for tuning in to SYGD, the podcast. Divorce may be messy, but you don't have to be. In this, our second season, join me as I set fires to lies, half-truths, and distortions that come along the way with the divorce journey and inspire you, motivate you to move past them quickly to live your best life. So set your clocks and your calendars and tune in each week. Welcome to Season 2, The Doctor is In. Hello. It is Dr. Sasheen. So this week we are talking about why saying yes is actually destroying your sense of acceptance of your new life. And it has a lot to do with the life that you just walked away from or were perhaps forced away from. But mostly it has to do with the fact of not wanting to deal with issues that were coming up, and the idea that saying yes, acquiescing, capitulating, compromising would somehow save you from the inevitable rifts that were forming in your relationship. So let's talk about why you can't keep saying yes, especially as you move through the transition of divorce, because yes becomes that place where you can hide and hope that things will just pass over you, when in fact what's really happening is that you're just delaying the inevitable and costing yourself so much in the long run. We'll tackle it all after a word from our sponsor. Hey everybody, it's Dr. Sasheen from So You're Getting Divorced? The podcast, here to talk to you about Anchor and the ease at which you too can launch and start your own podcast. If you haven't heard about Anchor, let me just break it down for you. Here is the 411. Number one, it's free. This is a great way to get started if you've never done podcasting, or if you're a pro and you really like the idea of using your phone or your computer to get your podcast going without all the hassle, because number two, they will distribute it for you to places like Pocket Casts, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. That's a pretty sweet deal. Next, you can make money while you're doing your podcast with no minimum listenership, and that's pretty darn spectacular. So, follow these instructions. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Now, let's get back to the show. All right, well, welcome back, everybody. It's been a little bit since we had a chance to chat. Hope you're staying safe out there. 2020 has promised and delivered on being a banner year, probably just not in the way that we all had hoped it would be. But good, bad, or indifferent, there's still a lot going on that requires our attention. And to that end, marriages are still in trouble, relationships are still on the rocks, and you still have a life to live in spite of it all. So let's talk about what's this issue about saying yes. At various points, I think, in our relationships, we get used to saying yes. Sorry, I'm wearing something with buttons and it's clicking. We get used to saying yes, even when the best thing that we actually could do for our sanity and our peace of mind or our self-confidence is to utilize a healthy no. But no is so scary, and it's really easy, especially when things are going south, and especially if you're dealing with a narcissist who has trained you in the way that he or she wants you to be. It is just easier to say yes. And the thought process that I have found is, it goes something like this. If I just say yes to enough things, then occasionally when I have to say no, it won't be as bad. And you find that's not really true, especially when you're dealing with a narcissist who takes every no as a battle cry for an attack against you. And even for people who are not necessarily driven by narcissistic tendencies, because not all relationships are based on that, though too many of them are, unfortunately. When you give yes so much power, you can sometimes forget that no is actually more powerful, because it allows you to set a boundary. You know, there's a great book, and I highly recommend that everyone reads it, and it's called, it's by Shonda Rhimes. For those of you out there who don't know who she is, I'm not sure how anyone couldn't, but she has penned some of the best shows on television. And so she wrote a book called A Year of Yes. I believe it's A Year of Yes, not The Year of Yes. And for For her, it was a year of saying yes to things. And that's different. So I think it's really important to recognize that a lot of messages that are out there say you should say yes to yourself and you should say yes to the things that scare you. And those things are really important. But what I'm talking about is in relationships, especially those that are going wrong and or south or sideways or whatever terminology makes you happy, it can become a defense mechanism to say yes. We say yes because we just want things to stay the same, or we don't want to rock the boat and make our kids unhappy, our spouse unhappy, our in-laws unhappy. We don't want to upset the apple cart and lose everything. And so we figure we can just say yes, and that will alleviate or forestall what this kind of rolling wave that's coming towards us. And the reality doesn't forestall anything, and the wave just gets bigger and bigger. It's like watching from behind a glass the ocean retreat and having a bird's eye view of the tsunami wave that's coming, and watching it getting bigger and bigger, but hoping that if I just stay behind the glass, that when the wave hits, it will protect me. The glass will protect me. Then that's what the yes becomes in messy relationships. The yes becomes the glass that we hope will protect us from the waves that just keep coming, and they just keep coming, and they just keep coming. And so this is a wake-up call. This is to remind my listeners out there that you can't yes your way through a bad relationship. You can't yes your partner into a better person, a better parent, a better spouse. You can't yes your friends into being nicer to you or sweeter or kinder or more considerate. You can't yes your parents into treating you differently or seeing you for who you really are now. You can't yes anyone into respecting you or giving you your due. But what you can do is prolong the pain of something by saying yes when you should have said no. Let's talk about this even more. So, this is the segment I like to say, this is why yes is actually a bad word, a 3-letter bad word. Number 1, yes gives a sense of false acceptance. Going back to our analogy of the tsunami wave that we can see coming, like we can see it. We know it's out there. We have felt the earthquake. We've heard the sirens. And yet we want to believe that this earthquake and tsunami proof building that we are standing in is going to withstand that 100-foot wave that is racing towards us. The same happens in relationships. We want to believe if we just say yes, yes to the invitation, yes to the moving in of the family member, yes to the party that we don't want to host, yes to the baby that we really didn't want to have. And that's a big one. If we say yes, then we'll be accepted. We will be cared for, seen, loved, respected, validated by the person who's doing the asking. And what you find rather rapidly for most of us, unfortunately, is that yes only made you feel good. And in the feeling good in the moment, it ushered in a whole heaping lot of pain in the process. And so this yes brings this false acceptance. And then as soon as that kind of golden acceptance moment passes, the reality of what you've said yes to just sinks into your bones. And then what can you do? Now you're in a mess because you said yes. You're in a mess because you said yes, which leads us to my second point. And by saying yes, we then hide behind complacency, because once you've said yes, it's like, if you could see my shoulders shrugging, it's like, what do you do? I mean, I've said yes, and now I've got all these bad consequences, and I can't really do much because now I can't say no, and I can't turn around. I can't do a 180 away from the thing that I just said yes to, because then they won't love me, they won't like me, whatever the consequence in your head, whatever the fear in your head that's talking and yelling in your ear, whatever that is rearing itself. And so we say yes, hoping for acceptance, which we don't get. And then we use that yes to hide behind complacency, because it allows us to hide behind it. It allows us to go, look, you said yes, now just come over here. hang out behind me and I'll protect you, which is also false, by the way. But complacency sets in because in order to change what we have now created by saying yes, we have to be willing to step out on a really thin layer of ice or step out from behind the thin wall of glass and say, that tsunami, not going to hit me. Nope, I'm going to do something different. And the fear is that we'll step out from behind that glass, we'll step out on that thin sheet of ice, and we will fall. Oh, and we will fall hard, and we will hit the ground, and we'll have scrapes and bumps and bruises. We might even break a bone or two, and that is much scarier than the hell that saying yes can unleash inside of our life, right? And so instead of saying no and saving our sanity and saving our lives, we say yes, and then we get complacent about it, which leads to the third point. In our complacency, we have now given ourselves an excuse to not accept any responsibility for what's going south. And this one's going to sting a bit. And that is exactly what it's supposed to do. Because here's the thing. By giving yourself permission to basically abscond from your own responsibility for yourself, by saying yes to the people who you didn't want to say yes to, you've also given yourself ample time now to find excuses for why things are not going well. And none of those excuses are going to center around you. None of them. None of those excuses are going to paint you in a bad light because you're now able to play the victim. You're now able to say, well, what can I do? What can I do? I can't do anything. My hands are tied. I'm handcuffed. I can't move. I don't have the money. I don't have the resources. I don't have the talent. I don't have the skills. I can't make it on my own. I'd be a single mother. What if I lose my child care? What if I lose my house? What if I lose this? Like now there are 1,001 reasons why, as things begin to go south, as inevitably they do when you have said yes from a false sense of security and from a place of inauthenticity. When things begin to go south, now come the excuses, and we're looking around and we're like the juggler who's juggling 15 balls in the air, just hoping that one of them will sound real enough for us to hold on to. Because the last thing we want to believe is that if we had just said no, we wouldn't be in this mess. Instead, we have to find another way to make sense of what we said yes to when we should have said no to begin with. Which leads us to the fourth thing, losing our sense of self. The misplaced use of yes in relationships that are going south, in relationships that are messy and that are harmful and that are not building you up. That misplaced yes takes ourself away. It takes ourself and it puts it on the shelf somewhere, and it creates a shell of a person. And into that shell, we hope that someone will pour into us a version of ourselves that they can live with because we said yes to them. And so if we can get them to pour into us the version of ourselves that they can live with, then they will give us value. And we will be able to keep the peace and keep the status quo going so that we don't lose everything else. But man, we lose our sense of self. We give it away to someone else because we want to please them, or at least we just want them not to leave. Now, this is all really hard, and it's stinky, and it's sticky, and it's icky, and it sticks to your bones, and it sticks to your soul. It's like mud caked on your soul. But that's what a misplaced yes is. It's muddying your soul. It's muddying your sense of self. It muddies your confidence. It muddies your perspective on your own life. It provides cover. It provides cover for you to not have to deal with the ramifications of the misplaced yes. Now, what are you going to do about it? Because you can't keep saying yes. Ultimately, at some point, all of us in a messy relationship, all of us in the messiness, find ourselves going, this misplaced yes stuff, this saying yes to everything, this is for the birds. This is ridiculous. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to be proactive in trying to figure out how to say yes and how to say no, which leads me to a great example. So, one of my favorite artists is Cardi B. She's married to Offset. They have a rather volatile relationship and a very public one. And so when she filed for divorce, she really ruffled a lot of feathers because what she said was, I'm not waiting around for him to cheat on me again. I'm not waiting around for the messiness that has been our marriage for 3 years to just get messy again so that I have an excuse to leave. This is a woman, I guarantee you, who spent a lot of time saying yes to things that she did not want to say yes to. And in the end, she said something very profound, which is, sometimes you are just growing in different directions. She found her no. She found her no. Whatever they had gone through for the 3 years prior to the moment that she filed for divorce. And I do recognize that they are back together again. And it will be interesting to see how he handles and how she handles this new phase of their relationship. But I digress. In the 3 years prior, they'd been through a lot. Offset's cheating was not exactly non-common knowledge. And some of the things that they got up to were not, it was common knowledge. And so at some point in that relationship, a light bulb clicked. And I imagine it went something like, there is only so many ways that I can try to please you before I have to recognize that in pleasing you, I am hurting me. That's it. It's just that clear. There are only so many ways that I can please you. And finally, in pleasing you, I am simply hurting me. So before I get hurt to the point where I am no longer whole, happy, and healthy, I'm going to take my marbles and go home. And I was very intrigued at the backlash that she got for speaking that truth, for saying, no, he's not cheating now, and things are fine now. But now that the dust has settled, I realize that I'm tired of saying yes to this version of life. So I'm going to say yes to a different version of life. We'll see how they do. I think it's fascinating because it's one of the things that we never get to see, which is what happens when yes is good. What happens when it's really what you want to say, when you say yes out of the fullness of your being as a whole, happy, and healthy person, when you can say yes with all of your heart and soul behind it, and when the first person that you say yes to is yourself. And this is what I found so fascinating about Cardi B. She was very clearly saying, this is a yes for me, not a no against him. It's a yes for me. And in that yes, she found a different perspective, a different path. We'll see how that works out. Now, somebody out there is going to say, but wait a second. It's not always bad to say yes, obviously. And what about compromising in relationships and trying to give and take and figuring out, what's the best way to navigate through things? Well, when you are saying yes because you want to, compromise is not a dirty word. When you are saying yes because you feel like you have to, then you're not compromising. You are capitulating, and that is a dirty word. And that's the key here. When you are engaging in healthy compromise, both parties walk away with something that they want, but not everything that they want. That is the heart of compromise. No one gets everything, and both parties are okay with that. But when you have to say yes, because if you don't, the consequences are bigger and harder and more fearful if you say no than if you say yes. Then you're not talking compromise anymore. You have decided to allow someone else to shape your sense of self and to hopefully pour into you something that they will find valuable. That is not a yes. That is a no that just didn't come out right. And so I want to wrap this by saying out there, because someone needs to hear this. You cannot yes yourself out of a bad marriage. You cannot yes yourself out of a bad marriage. In other words, you can't say yes to enough things to prevent whatever's going wrong in your relationship. But you can yes yourself into a worse marriage. And you can yes yourself into a worse relationship. And so you have to remember that no amount of yes will prevent someone from doing bad things to you. No amount of yes, no amount of yeses will prevent someone from doing bad things to you. However, a judiciously placed, well-spoken, and clear no will prevent someone from doing any bad thing to you that you don't want them to do. It's a food for thought kind of podcast tonight, and I want you to really think about the next time you are confronted with the messiness of the relationship that you're sitting in. What is it that you've been saying yes to that led to this moment? What have you been saying yes to that's led to some complacency as opposed to action? And if you were to take a well-placed and firm no into the relationship, would you find yourself in a better relationship, or would you finally find the key to walk out the door? Something to think about. And that, as they say, is the tea. Thanks for tuning in this week. To get more, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, LinkedIn, and coming soon, Patreon, for those who want to subscribe and who want to support this podcast. If you have any questions, please contact me at support@sashinmobley.com. And as always, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment so that we can continue to rise in the rankings. That's it for this week. Take care. See you next time. Bye.